Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another Monday Morning Art Talk. Whippy! All right, so today before we start, just wanted to discuss what I had talked about a few weeks ago in regards to everyone wanting to be a feature animation designer and as opposed to getting into the other side with gaming and television and everything else. Again, what's happening on the whole television side is just blowing up with just Netflix and creating their own studio. And I mean, there's so many different things going on where it's a good thing to get into. But I also just kind of wanted to mention that I didn't really mention it, and I wanted to, and I was just looking at what I had talked about, because I sometimes need to just review and go, well, what did I talk about that day? And what I realized that I missed out on was just the need to have validation in regards to why people want to get into feature. I think as a lot over TV is, getting into feature is a big deal. And I think it's a big deal. I think getting into animation and working at a studio all across the board is a big deal, because what it does, it not only tells you, but it tells other people that you're good, that you know what you're doing, and that's how you got in, because you're good at what you do. So it's something to really be proud of and pat yourself on the back and be like, man, I got hired at that studio. Because there was a day, and it's not so much anymore. I remember when I was working in television animation at Warner Brothers and Disney, the feature people would always look upon TV people as the bastard children. You're the bastard child. You're not really as talented as us. There was a big ego. There was a lot of that stuff going on, and it was almost like this battle. It was kind of weird. It was just like the TV people are like, you pompous ass feature animation people, and the feature animation were people, oh, you people, you can't even make it into feature. You guys aren't good enough. And there was this weird competition, and it wasn't real. It was just egos clashing and bumping, and it was kind of bizarre. But it's the same thing that happened in the movie industry, where actors used to feel being in a motion picture, being on the big screen was way bigger and way more exclusive and way more than being on a TV show. But look what's happening now. It's completely opposite. All those big stars want to have TV shows, and they want to be associated with TV shows a lot of times because there's longevity, there's better deals, there's a lot of things that happen, and that's why we see that crossover now, because no one cares anymore. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, it is. I mean, it's a big deal, because when you get to when you're doing that, it's a big deal only because if that's important to you. And that's what I was getting at with my last video. If you feel that you're that type of person where that's very important to you, to be able to prove to people that you're good and you're something, there's that part. But like I mentioned, I advise not to get into it for that reason. You do it because you love it. This is sort of like what you want to do, and you just happen to be good at your craft, and because of your skill set and your skill level, you had the opportunity to get involved into that side of film, whether you're even doing storyboards for live action as opposed to doing storyboards for television animation. It's a different caliber of people and skill set. So it's something to be proud of, but also something just to, really think about that. Are you happy? Are you happy with your choice? Are you happy with the direction you've gotten into and the path that you've chosen? So the bottom line is it's almost like what Bob Dylan said. I like what he said, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because I don't know it verbatim, word for word, but he said, success is waking up in the morning and going to bed at night, and everything in between doing what it is that you love to do. all right, and making your own choice and making your own days. And that's what it comes down to. So if you're able to wake up in the morning, throughout the day, do what you love to do, whether it is working in a studio or working for yourself, and going to bed at night and going into repeat, that's success. And I truly believe that. And success to me too, everyone's at a different level. Success for me is providing for my family, being able to, I'm not chasing millions of dollars and being so obsessed with money or everything. I'm just like, can I make a living doing what I love to do, supporting my family, getting my kids to, they're 13 and 15 right now, so I'm almost, I'm halfway there, a little bit more than halfway. I'm just like 18 years old. Once they're 18 and they're really even 21 and they're out in the real world, that's the greatest success, to know that I was able to raise a family as an artist and do that. So what I wanted to just discuss today is just the pressures that artists face, because I've gone through both of them, as being a studio artist and being a freelance artist, and what sort of pressures are you going to deal with. The reality is you're going to be facing pressures in both of those, okay? So to begin with, working in an animation studio, is the pressure comes from once you get in. I'm not going to talk about all the stuff and the things I've talked about it, the things building up and trying to get into the studio in the first place. The pressure of once you're in the studio is the constant pressure of hoping and trying to maintain that you're going to keep working in the studio, that you're going to keep having a job. The biggest fear that comes around, again, having been experienced it myself and been in the system, was when hearing about, is a show going to get picked up? And what happens is when you're working on shows, and it could be a good show, I don't know why, for the love of God, why these studios wait to the very last minute to decide whether they're going to pick up a show or not, but they do it all the time. So they hire the whole crew. The whole crew gets sort of accustomed to the style. Everyone's gone through the learning curve, trying to figure out the style. They're all on board. They're working. Everyone's working cohesively together. All of a sudden, the show's coming to an end. You know that because you usually only get picked up for a certain amount of shows. It could be anywhere from 6 shows to 12 shows to 15. Who knows? It's all going to vary. And then starts to become the buzz in the studio. Oh my God, we haven't got a pickup yet. We don't know. The ratings are doing well, but we still don't know. So now all of a sudden, the studio artist, their mindset is like, holy shit, I got to start thinking about getting another job. I got to start looking. So they start to become detached from that project because they're worried about where's their next paycheck coming from, because they're doing nothing else but working for the studios. They're not developing their own projects and they don't have any other sources of income. This is it. This is where they get all their bread and butter from one location, which is detrimental in this day and age, in my opinion. I think you never put all your eggs in one basket, and that's why you always got to be working on stuff for yourself just to carry you through once the layoff hiatus comes, because it's coming. I don't care what studio you're at. You could have that hiatus, and hiatus is when you get laid off for a certain amount of time. They tell you, we're laying you off for 2 months, but we're gonna bring you back. So sometimes that's awesome. That's like, okay, cool, man. I got 2 months. I've saved money. I've put money aside. I can do that. I'm going to work on my own stuff for 2 months, and then you can come back to the studio. Other times it's like, we're laying you off. There's a layoff. So people go into panic mode, all right? And they start to think about, well, what am I going to, do? All these other things happen. And so it gets distracting. And then all of a sudden the studio goes, oh, you got to pick up. Oh, thank God. Oh my God, my heart attack. Oh, I can be free now. Clear my mind. And so there's always these studios, it's always, did you get a pickup? Did you get a pickup? That's what all anyone cares about, whether you got a pickup. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety that comes with working in the studios, because you never know how long it's going to last. And you can work on a production and all of a sudden it gets killed and it gets cut because someone messes up, some director, someone screws up and ruins it for everyone. And it happens in live action, films and movies, and also in television animation where, these things happen. I remember when I was at Nickelodeon and it happened on Invader Zim. I remember that big thing. I was on a project called Hysteria and we all got laid off. We thought we had a lot of longevity, but it all got cut short. So you go through all those pressures inside the studio, okay? So it never ends. Just because you get a job at a studio, you are never settled, is what I'm trying to say. And don't ever feel settled. Don't feel because you got your job at the studio like I did when I first got my job at Warner Brothers. I thought, woohoo, I made it. I'm a studio artist. I made it to Warner Brothers. Holy moly, this is unbelievable. You know, I was 23, around 23 years old, I think. And I remember a woman told me who'd been there in the industry for a long time. She says, you got a lot to learn, kid. This is not what it's all about. This isn't it. And I'm like, huh? What? Why'd you say that to me? And then later did I realize through my experience that, man, she was right. She was right. But so don't feel settled. That's the thing. Don't settle. And that's the uneasy thing of working in the studios. Now, everyone's dream is to, work at home, be a freelance artist, have my own thing, call my own shots. The reality is, yes, it's a nice thing to be independent, but you're never really independent because as a freelance artist, get another whole life experience I've had, is you're always working for someone else. You always have someone else. You're always relying on someone else to hire you, to give you that opportunity. So what it requires on your end is a lot more diligence, a lot more stronger work ethic, a lot more hustle in the sense where you're got to reach out to people, show up at more conventions, put out more product, post more on social media. You'll notice that sometimes a lot of people who are working in the studios, it's not always the case, but they're not posting as much on social media because they're busy. They got all that. They're doing that. The freelance artist, you'll usually see posting a lot more. Again, this isn't 100%, so don't quote me as like, he's just saying this. I'm not. I'm saying that a lot of times you'll see freelance people posting a lot more because you constantly have to reintroduce yourself. You're constantly selling yourself, and and there's that saying, out of sight, out of mind. So if you're not being seen, if you're not going to conventions, if you're not setting up, if you're not actively doing something, creating independent projects and putting yourself out there, no one's going to remember you. People aren't going to know where to find you, and you won't go get those emails or calls for usually emails. It's not even, you never get phone calls anymore. No one just calls you. It's always emails. Hey, are you available? And so by putting yourself out there is where you're going to start to have things happen, but it's putting yourself out there. And that's a stressful thing too. As a freelance artist, where's the next paycheck coming from? Where's my next meal coming from? How's that going to work? So there's the pressures in that. So don't fool yourself by thinking that you can escape the pressures. What I want to say to you today is you're never going to escape the pressures of being an artist and having a life as an artist, as a cartoonist. All those cartoonists out there that want to do work for magazines and everything else, and like the New Yorker. You guys, if you haven't seen that New Yorker, I don't know what the name of it is, on Netflix, I think it is, about New York cartoonists. Watch it. You got to watch that show. It's just like when you see, man, that's a tough life. That's a tough life. Trying to sell your cartoons, and I can't remember the names, just left my mind, but what it's called is just when you're doing, it's not spec art necessarily, but what you kind of are. You're creating all these cartoons just to go pitch it to the editor and sit in their office and hope that they buy your cartoon from you and get you a little bit of money to do once you've done all those drawings. And sometimes you'll get in the magazine and sometimes you won't. So being a gag cartoonist is very difficult. Getting into magazines, doing all these things, relying on other people is just difficult, all right? But that's what we're always having to do unless you're able to develop something for yourself that some other people, independent artists, find value in. And that's where you build brands and you build things where people go, I want that. It's like, just think about it. You put together a restaurant. I'm just going to say Cheesecake Factory, okay? Because every time I go to Cheesecake Factory, it's if you guys who don't live in America and don't have it or aren't familiar with Cheesecake Factory, that restaurant is, not only is it terrific, there's such great food and what great variety, there is never not a line to get into Cheesecake Factory. It's just it's full all the time, nonstop. So that's an independent company that creates a business that people want because they love the food and they keep showing up. They're not beholden to Disney. They're not beholden to other people, other companies, anyone else. They're beholden to themselves, their brand, their building. Coca-Cola. I love Coca-Cola. I'm going to buy Coca-Cola. I'm going to buy Snapple over this iced tea brand. Whatever it is, when you think about food, when you think about restaurants, when you think about all these independent things that go on out there, is because the consumer says, I love that. And that's what happens with art. When a consumer, when an artist says, you know what, I love that guy's stuff and I gotta have it. I want it. It makes me feel good. It improves my skill set. Whatever it is, it makes there's value in it. So if you're able to create something that maybe you're developing something, plush toys, it could be pins, it could be anything that someone goes, that's hilarious, that's awesome, what a great gift that would make. And thereby that consumer is taking their money that they're earning and they're handing it over to you because they find value in that. And that's where you start to build up an independent business that way. Again, if people aren't finding value in what you do, you got to maybe change what you do, okay? So that's very important. But again, creating something, I feel, is develop things if you can. Try to really think hard, dig deep, and try to find something. What can I do that can maybe change people's lives? And the reality is, when you can somehow affect and change people's lives in a way, all around, when you think about that and you think about all the people that have affected or changed your life in some way, from a teacher, from when you were a kid, whatever it is, whatever you've experienced, you'll start to go, you know what, those things had value to me and I supported those and there was value in that and creating that. So I don't think you can ever go wrong when you're developing something that helps humanity, that helps mankind in some way, you know, or the world that you're at, that you're doing it because not only you're passionate about it. You know, it makes me just tap into, again, and I'm going off the train a bit here, but just the passion aspect, really having that. Don't do things just to make a quick buck. It's never going to work. And I want to say this because quite a few art talks ago, I was talking about getting into licensing and doing all that. Now, I believe in licensing and getting involved in that, and I do it myself, and I'm involved in some licensing things, but it's art related. Here I'm talking about, I was trying to get, I think of inventions all the time, things, just everyday objects that people can use in their house. And I think, I'm going to license that, I'm going to do that. And as I kept doing it, I realized I'm losing interest. It's not my passion. It's not what I love to do. It's not the thing. So now I'm developing something brand new that involves something that I'm so passionate about. You know, I can't talk about it right now, but it's something that it's in line with what I do and everything about me and what I do. And that's the important thing when you're starting to think about jumping into changing careers or getting something. You can't just say, I'm just going to quit my career and I'm just going to start being a children's book illustrator. You can't just do that. You cannot just do that. You got to be developing your children's book while you're working on your other career. While you're doing what you do as a career, but you're not happy with it, you need to be working and developing it and researching it and know how hard and difficult it is just to be a children's book author, especially if you're relying on other people. If you're relying on a publisher or anyone else, it's so hard. You know, not that it's impossible, but it's so difficult, as opposed to if I'm developing all my own children's books and making it for myself, I'm not just going to show up and hope to go to the Society of Illustrators or something else and join an organization and think that I'm going to all of a sudden become a children's book illustrator. I'm going to work on this stuff and I'm going to independently sell it and put it out there, and I'm going to go to libraries and I'm going to talk to them and see if they'll let me do a little book reading and see if I can sell my books there, and maybe I could align something with the schools and go to PTA and talk to the PTA and see see if I could do something with them. And you got to think outside the box. That's the bottom line. The problem is everyone's inside the same goddamn box, you know, and they all want to just be in the same. They're all repeating what everyone else is doing because everyone's looking at what everyone else has done or is doing and thinks that I got to fit inside there somehow and I got to be inside there instead of, you know what? I'm going to let all those people over there run to that little piece of bread that's been thrown over there while they're all distracted and they're all over there. I'm going to be over here doing this. So your job as an artist isn't just to think like to have the mindset of all the other artists and all the other creators out there. You got to think of new solutions and new ways. This is innovation. This is how we move on. This is how we progress in our life. This is how we take things to the next level. So try to change things up just a little bit. Do something a little bit different than the norm, whatever that is. And I can't tell you how to put that in your brain. I think it comes from experience. I think it comes from listening. I think it comes from being open to looking, like I've mentioned before, looking into other people's lives that have nothing to do with art, that you're looking at businessmen and entrepreneurs and innovators and architects and inventors in all different facets. Watch biographies. I watch biographies almost non-stop. I just love them. I'm just like, I get filled by them. I'm just like so intrigued. But I think that's where a lot of different things come from, which those little sparks which will push an idea. It just makes me think about my very first portfolio that I submitted to Warner Brothers. Everyone was submitting black portfolios, you know, those things you paid $30 for at the art store. I thought, well, I don't want to pay $30 for a black portfolio. I'm going to make my own portfolio. So I just made my own portfolio out of wood and took wood engraving and I engraved it with a little kid's drawing on it. For those of you that have gone back to some of my very old art talks, have probably seen it. I may have showed it. But that was distinctive and different, and that's what the director who I worked with told me. I remember seeing that at the bottom of the pile of black portfolios and thought, what the hell is that? And so that got me a little edge up. So again, be distinctive. Do things different. Don't follow the masses. Don't just try to think that, well, that's what they did. You know, every time I would do talks, and I'm, you know, doing talks all over the world, all the places that I go to, and the one thing that I used to do all the time, I used to go and I used to tell people, do this, you know, this is what I did. This was my journey. You know, this might be a good thing. And I realized, what are you doing, dummy? Don't tell them what you did because everyone's got a different journey. Tell them how. Break down the sort of the steps on the mindset of what to think about. And those sort of things include like persistence and passion and you know, there's a lot of other things that I go through. But these are the sort of things, again, switching the mindset to kind of get you there. All right. So anyway, that's food for thought. I hope that was helpful for you today. Thanks for watching. Go to silvertunes.com/events. You guys can see some upcoming places that I'll be at. I'm coming to Seattle this coming month. I'm doing a talk with Schoolism, which is going to be very exciting. I'll be at the Emerald City Comic Con. I'm only going to have about 36 books that I'm bringing because they're so heavy and I'm shipping them today and there's too many. So I'm only shipping 36 books. So first come, first serve on my my book there. And just keep updated on anything else I'm doing. I'd love to see you guys at the retreat that I'm doing in Santa Cruz coming up. And I'm going to be in Mexico. I'm going to be in Japan. I'm going to be in England. And I'm going to be coming to Spain. So check it out. Thanks again for watching and make it a great week. Take care.